The fact of the matter is, when you're seeing that movie, the sound that's being shared and the spirit, that's the Bubs. That's what I decided to graduate and spread all around the world to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to have the experiences that we got when we were undergraduates singing for Tufts Beelzebubs. So listen to these guys, probably 75% of what they say isn't true, but it makes for a good story. And make sure that Ed tells you about the golf balls. Anyway, thank you guys.
I'm really glad that Deke was able to do that for us. I know we all wish him well with his health concerns. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Connor Flynn now, who's going to introduce the Sing Off, and you guys can talk a little bit about it, and when you're ready, I will cue up an excellent video that Connor has prepared for us.
Okay, well, hello everyone, and I think Eric would be great to start off about how this all got going, but before we, move that way, I know we have a great crowd, but, Don, I got my eye on you, so, just, don't worry about it. Eric, go ahead.
Torque.
First of all, thank you very much for having us. It's a huge honor for all of us up here to be able to talk about this with all of the people who, or not all, but a good deal of people who made it possible. So the fact that you guys are actually here and are interested in what we have to say about it, like I said, it's a big honor. So anyway, I've been asked to start from the beginning, as it were. The very first contact that we had about the Sing Off was over the summer, in between my freshman and sophomore year, so this would have been the summer of 2009. They had just sort of started to conceive this idea of, or I guess it had been in the works for a little while, but the ball had begun rolling on this, and somebody who knew about the Bubs really wanted us to come and audition. The first phone call that I got was from somebody who was just an employee for the casting company, and honestly I didn't think much of it. I wasn't entirely sure that the show would air at all first, that it would be popular. I was wary of sort of putting our name on something that would end up being a huge flop. But as the summer went on, I got a couple more phone calls, and when I finally realized who these phone calls were coming from, they were the director of the casting company, the very top of the ladder. We started to realize that we might have a decent chance of getting on the show, and that it might be a project that we'd be interested in doing. So we finally got back to school after exchanging some emails over the summer, trying to figure out where people stood on whether or not we wanted to audition at all, and in the same vein, whether we would want to participate in the show if it came to be. And of course, one of the big things was the idea of competing, which had been sort of put to rest in the early 90s. I came into a group that was very against the idea of competing. But this opportunity comes around, and of course we have to take a closer look at whether it's worth it. So we come into the school year, and I remember some very long conversations in the bug room with our president at the time, Eli Seidman, our music director Nick Lamb, and historian Alex Katsoukas. Weighing the options, whether or not we wanted to do it, whether or not it was all fitting with the Bubs philosophy, whether or not we would be looked down upon by our alumni association for caving and selling out to this TV show. Eventually, we come to the decision that we should at least audition. We've been sort of hounded by the casting company, and so we make the decision. It might have been the very first weekend of classes. The very first weekend of classes, we rent a van and we drive down to New York wearing our our notoriously bad bug gear at the time. And we show up, we're of course terrified by the contracts that they're handing us. They're huge, they're incredibly strongly worded, and we're a bunch of 18 to 21-year-old guys with really no concept of what it is we're looking at.
And the new guys at the time, they've been in the group for all of 5 days.
And we brought them along.
When we brought them with us, we're like, here, get on the van, sign this contract, we're going on television, guys.
That was pretty funny. So we go to the audition, we sing a couple songs, and we talk to them for a while. And we go home with, we're happy at least that we've given it a shot, but while we're there are hundreds of other groups that have come through this audition process. There's so many other people there. And without real perspective on what they were looking for in the show, we thought to ourselves, well, we gave it a shot, but this is obviously a little bit bigger than we thought, and the chances of us being on the show probably pretty slim. So we go back home, we go about our business, but we continue to get calls from the casting company. We find out that we've made it through the next round of selection, and they start pushing us to sign papers and really commit to being able to do the show if we get on. So then starts the adventure of how to figure out how to still pass our classes if we miss Thanksgiving to Christmas. 2 weeks of classes, reading period, and then final exams. Honestly, if you want the real story about how we worked all that out, you should find Eli Seidman after all this is done. I don't think I've ever seen a human being drive himself as crazy as Eli did during that time to make sure that we could get on the show and all still continue to make our way towards a degree. I remember now, I think it was maybe a Tuesday night, I had gotten a call from Michelle McNulty, who was the director of the casting company, who we had been talking with throughout this process. And she said, you gotta get the guys together, we gotta talk about something. So we call an emergency meeting, we get, I think, almost everybody together in the club room.
It's like someone turned on the Bubs signal.
Yeah. Right. So we go to the club room and we put Michelle McNulty on speakerphone in the room, and she says, "Guys, I got to tell you, it's been a long process, and throughout this, we're harassing her the whole time because we're so terrified of these contracts that we want to make sure that if we decide not to do the show, we can. We're constantly asking her, like, well, we can still back out of this one, right? we can still not do it, right?" And finally, she's like, you guys have been a real pain in my butt over the last few months. But I've got some news. We talked production, and they want you guys to be on the show. And we all, of course, go crazy in the room without really having any idea of what we're celebrating for. Yeah, we're probably gonna fail all of our classes, but hey, we're gonna be on this show. And that was really just the beginning. Interestingly enough, as long and tedious of a process as that was really that was how it all began. And then from there was the real adventure of trying to figure out how to work out the class situation, which is a far less interesting story. What's that? The classes thing? Right. Okay. So the question was how did we work out the academic situation? Essentially, we all had to work out whatever was best for us and our professors. I would say we tried a few different approaches, but we found out that the best way to come at it was going to be just to talk to our professors, figure out whether we wanted to just finish classes when we came back the following semester. We could take incompletes. Some professors allowed us to do that. Some guys actually, or a great deal of guys actually, continued to take their classes remotely. You know, write papers, hand in problem sets, study while we were in LA.
I'm sure Sam had to fly back for a, what was it, intro to psychology exam? Because they wouldn't allow a proctor out in California. But you had to come all the way back, and I don't know how long the test took you, but it happened.
Yeah.
And then, guys went to crazy lengths, and then we had to show something like the next day. But guys were nuts about their studies. Tim Conrad, big on books.
The producers were thrilled when Sam went up to them and said, "So I need to fly back to Boston tomorrow for a test, and then turn around and come back." And I know we were supposed to record, but we're going to make that happen. To be fair to them, they were really good about making sure that we were accommodated for where they could, and also we were lucky in that because it was a union operation, they had to stop work with us after a certain time, which I think was like 10 at night or something. It was decently late, but early enough that we could still then work until 2 in the morning and then get up and do it all over.
It's actually a pretty funny thing that I think about is this very just very not glamorous at all sort of parallel universe that was going on with all of the show filming. Was every night we've got probably like 8 guys sitting at a table down in the lobby of the hotel because it's the only place that we can get wireless internet, and we're all like furiously typing away and finishing problem sets and but I withdrew from class because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to finish it. We finished some stuff later on. Some guys were able to to pass classes remotely, and people made it work for them. I can't say that my GPA was quite up to snuff that semester, but I've got a good story to tell about it. So I don't mind too terribly. Anyway, so I've babbled enough. We should move on, I think.
Yeah, so what you're about to see a clip of almost everything unproductive that I could find that we did while we were out in LA for a while. And a lot of this video was taken by our very own Pen Rosen and myself, and you'll get a good dose of Eli and all the guys in there. And so I hope you can get a good sense of, I'm sure you didn't expect that we were all, it's a lot of fun games.
I'm with Nick Lachey here. I'm about to open a Sing Off. Hey guys, welcome to a Sing Off. These ain't here. We're about to launch a whole special field singing competition on There Live. Tune in next week with the Beelzebubs, Sing Off, the other groups and stuff.
Okay. I'm here live on the scene where the 13th member of the Beelzebubs has been trapped in his rug for about 13 hours. Tensions are high here. I'm thinking we may need instruments pretty soon. But again, this voices only thing has gone on for far too long. Can you hear me? It's looking grim. It's looking grim. I'm hearing right now it is not actually a bug. It is a member of NOTA.
One of the members of NOTA is still stuck in this rug. It's been 14 hours presently. We hear faint Spanish sounds coming from the bottom, but it's been traveling up the rug since 7 o'clock this morning. Eli, how are you feeling about this whole situation?
Frankly, man, I'm quite nervous. I think the only thing keeping me going is the rhythm.
Yo, I ain't never had a line. Don't forget the Times, New York Times. Don't forget the Times. My favorite Greek letter is lambda.
This is the motivation in Miss Oakhouse's mind behind pulling that fire alarm. That big moment.
Well, we just wanted to give people a taste of what it's like to sleep less than the other members of the group because we do have to get up a couple hours earlier than you guys to get ready and go home later. So.
Back to you on Top Stories R Us.
I'm not gonna do it, Ken. Okay.
Beelzebub thing. That's pretty hot. I'm a little scared of you all because I feel like somewhere there's like a whole cult where they're breeding just some dogs. And every time a new face comes up, it's a little scary, right? They just come up with a really sweet voice and a nice little wink in their eye. And you're like, where did these guys come from? And I think each of you are just absolutely bubtastic and
Time is precious, I look at my phone, they out of control.
we're still Bubs. Doing goofy, silly stuff as much as possible. So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I think it kind of started, frankly, that whole mentality back in New York with the audition. I remember we would go from having like these 100 pages of just contracts. Yo, just sign it, we're gonna run into the other room. And we have this audition and we're all just like bouncing into each other. Everybody else is coming out of the room, you know, all these other groups are coming out, hyperventilating, and you know, you see people on unicycles and crazy hats, and it's just like a strange a cappella accordion convention or something. We come out, and we're not all, you know, we're not wearing color-coordinated cummerbunds or something. We're all just walking in, we have our terrible buff gear on, and making awful jokes, and they seem to love it. And when we came in to meet the final casting director, we continued with the awful jokes, and it just kind of stuck. And then they started interviewing us outside, and you know, we learned a few things like sarcasm doesn't pick up on camera, and that was a great lesson to learn and forget about, so, you know, every 3 minutes. What do you mean sarcasm doesn't pick up on camera? Yeah, a bunch of that. So, they would just like put it, you know, they'd shut it off a few times, like, guys are being, you know, from friend to friend right now, you're just being dumb. We're like, okay, bro. It was fun, and it was funny because we had these people driving us around. The Wranglers that you saw on the tape. We had, you know, Kelsey and Berger. They were some of our Wranglers, and we'd have one person in the band who, you know, wasn't in the group, and then the rest of us. And it, you know, we felt like we kind of had an intoxicating effect on whoever was in the band with us because they could be very, you know, staid and reserved when they got in the band with us. But after about 5 minutes, we had them sharing their deepest, darkest secrets. Saying, you know, that one time when I was 13-year-old, yeah, that was crazy, man. It's like, what are you guys getting? Yes, we're an acapella group, we're so much more. Share.
I think it's the attitude we had on the show is, I think it's worth saying that when we voted to go on the show after we were accepted, we didn't realistically think that we were going to last beyond the first episode. At the time, we thought it was going to be all professional groups. We were going to go out there, we'd have a blast, we'd go home. Now, of course, when we voted to go on the show, we voted to win the show rather than just to go on. But I guess we didn't vote to do what ended up happening. But we went out there. We thought we were going to go off, and so for us, we were just going to dick around and have a great time in LA. There was no drive. There were groups who were there, and it was their chance to make it. And for us, it was our chance to have a great time in LA and run around in ridiculous colored sweaters. And I think that really wore off. I mean, I've had, since leaving, I've had people get in touch with me who are trying to audition for the Sing Off and say, how did the Bubs brand themselves when they were trying to get on the show? I said, we didn't brand ourselves. That was the whole point. We just went out there and said, we're going to have a great time. I know. That came later.
Did Ed become involved with the Sing Off, and can maybe Ed, you speak a little bit to your role in the whole thing?
Cinnamon. So I started off really peripherally with the show, doing so Deke and the music supervisor, Clyde, who was in one of those shots, we're working on acapella bumpers, so like cuts a commercial, you hear 15 seconds of music and it's recorded acapella. And he brought me in to work on that, so I was doing stuff that had nothing to do with the competition or the Bubs involvement, just, you know, recording and mixing these 15-second pieces of music going in and out of commercials. And then I think the next sort of step was these opening group numbers, and there's so little rehearsal time because there's wardrobe stuff, there's interview stuff. Everyone's working on their individual songs, so I did these, he hired me to make learning tapes basically for the opening numbers that people could just listen to when they're endlessly riding around in cars or vans or whatever. So I did that, and then that sort of got me in the mix, and people on the show behind the scenes kind of knew who I was. And then for the live finale, there was just too much for Deke to do. So he basically talked to the director and said, give me another person, maybe have somebody else here to help me out. And so it was like,
They brought you in before, didn't they? Before the live finale?
I mean, that was really when I was became an employee of the show. a little bit like, we didn't talk about the fact that I was from the Bubs, because it was like, you know, kind of an illegal conflict of interest there. But there was just so much needing to be done that it was like, they weren't pulling punches at that point. He was like, I need this guy. They brought me out. I just helped out with the finale and then stayed on for the other.
Yes. From the beginning.
What was the question?
The question was Deep's affiliation with the Bubs known to the production crew from the beginning? And it was. I remember just after we said we were going to go on the show, he texted, I think it was Eli, said, hey guys, can't wait to see you. I couldn't tell you that I was on the show before you were in, but now you're in, I can tell you we're going to see you in LA. And for most of us, we'd never actually met Deep until, we met him just after we knew we were going to be on the show. We saw him in North Carolina. We ambushed him in North Carolina. He was giving a talk and at a festival that we weren't attending, but we were driving by.
There was a ski mask involved.
So we stopped, got out of the van, broke into this room at Duke University and just tackled him. And most of us had never even met him before. So that was how he got introduced to some of us when we saw him out on the show. And I think Ed is underselling his role in the first season of the Sing Off as well. They brought in a lot of very well-renowned sound people to run the sound for the show, who had won Grammys and all of this great stuff, but had never mixed an acapella group before. And if you listen to the first few episodes, they're really bad. And it wasn't until Ed got involved that the quality got better by virtue of his being there. And I think
there's obviously a lot more to say about the Sing Off, and we're going to have some questions and answers at the end. But I'd like to move on now to Glee. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Evan, to say a few words about that. And then we have a clip, and you and Ed and others can talk about your role in Glee.
Right. So I became business manager the year after the Sing Off. It was my junior year, and we were sort of coming down off of that high of having been on national television. And you know, there was an understanding that we didn't know what it was going to look like, but things weren't going to be the same after that. And certainly we started getting gigs, again, requests for gigs, flooding in from the moment I took over. So I feel like a lot of times I get some credit I don't deserve because I just answered the emails that came, whereas other people had to find gigs when they were business manager. But the one interesting thing that we were talking about was, well, we're getting all these gigs, that's great, but what are we going to do next? How are we ever going to have a better year than we just had? There was no, or even match it in terms of exposure for the group. And we really weren't sure. And at the time, we were sort of at a loss as to how we built on what we'd already had. And then it kind of fell into our laps. I was in class, like a good Beelzebub often is. And I got a number of phone calls from a number that I didn't recognize. And I said, well, I don't recognize this number, and I'm a good student, so I won't pick up. And I got a voicemail, so as I got out of class, I picked up the voicemail. Hi, I'm Dante DiLoretto. I'm the executive producer for Glee, and I'm looking for someone from the Beelzebubs. Please give me a call. And I kind of lost it, because at the time, Glee, it was the first season had just ended. It was the new hit show. None of us watched it.
And that was when Evan started picking up his phone in class.
Yeah. That was the end, actually. That was not me. Yeah. And we knew it was a big deal. And so I called him back right away and said, well, I'm someone from the Beelzebubs, let's talk. He said, well, I'm looking for an arranger from the Bubs. And at the time, it really wasn't clear what they wanted, and they weren't being very forthcoming about what they wanted. So I want to know who arranges your music. And I said, well, we within the group and the organization as a whole arrange our music. He goes, okay, well then we're potentially looking for a song from an acapella group. He said that originally when they pitched Glee, they wanted it to be a show about acapella groups, but the network said that won't play as well as show choirs. So high school show choirs it was, but they still wanted to have to feature an acapella group. They thought they had an opportunity, and so while they've been doing that, and actually it's a misconception is often that Glee came as a result of the Sing Off, but it actually came as a result of the work that guys before the Sing Off had done, and that when they were researching to put Glee on television and they wanted to do this acapella thing, they went out looking for acapella groups and they found the recordings that had been done before the Sing Off ever happened. They were referencing solos from Play the Game, songs from Code Red that they'd heard, and that was the sound they were looking for with this new group. So we eventually, I called Ed as my default music person when we needed help like that, and I told him this was going on. I said, look, I don't know how they want to run this, but we don't feel safe without you involved, because we'd seen what had happened on the Sing Off, right, where the first episodes were bad, and then Ed got involved and it was good. And it was one thing when it was a show full of acapella groups and everyone sounded bad. It would be something completely different if we'd gotten on to a show as the Bubs and it didn't work. So as things moved forward, they got a little bit clear about what they wanted. So we want a song, we don't want you guys on screen, which we were disappointed with, but let's be honest, it's probably a good decision. We just want your voices, and we want it next week. And we said, okay, we're not going to do it unless Ed's involved. And that was, we said from the very beginning, we said, look, we have this experience with the Sing Off. We really don't feel comfortable doing it unless Ed is there working with us. And they said, okay, well, we'll get back in touch with you on that. And they called me back and said, well, we have our own producer. I said, that's great, but we're still not going to do it if Ed's us. So eventually they conceded and they said, well, we'll have Ed co-produce this with you. Okay, fine. So long as Ed's in the room, we're okay with it. And it turned out to be really good that happened, because the first call I got, so Tommy Farragher was the producer that they set up for this. The first call I got from Tommy was, hey, Evan, it's Tommy. We're getting ready for the recording session. I was just wondering what instruments you guys are going to need. We were calling Ed, and I said, what are we going to do with this guy? He said, well, we don't use instruments. He goes, no, I was listening to the recordings. There are some instruments in there. No, I'm pretty sure we don't use instruments. So we sorted that one out, and then came the process of negotiating the contract, which was hectic, because of course we had a 1-week window. They wanted us to go record in New York, which would have been a problem, but we were already singing for Scott Rayout, his now wife, that weekend. And so we already had planned to be in New York. So thank you, you made it possible. And so we were negotiating this contract while we were going to New York. We sort of sent an advance party to go to Ed's house to start recording the song. They told us it was Teenage Dream. They sent us the arrangement. We had a chance, Ed sent us the arrangement. Ed arranged it and sent it to us. Sent it to us, and we'd had one rehearsal with it. We sent an advance party of 4 of us down to Ed's house to record the night before. And while this was happening, I was running all over the place we had to get approval from the school in case they wanted to use the Tufts name. We had to get the BAA to sign off because they own the trademark to the Beelzebubs name. So we were doing all of that and still negotiating this contract, and we had to get down to New York. So I was in the car with Jack Thomas, Eric, and Connor. And I get in the car. Shadow puppets over the contract as difficult as possible. And so we finally hash this out, we get everyone to sign it. We're there in New York, and we're at Avatar Studios, which is studio to go to the bathroom, he comes back in and goes, guys. I just peed next to Ricky Martin.
So for all the kids in the room, where this actually happened, clarification sake. I left the little studio room and I go and I'm waiting outside the bathroom and all of a sudden I see this lady coming down. I'm like, oh my god, I'm looking for my friend. Have you seen my friend? I don't know who your friend is. Sorry, no, I haven't. So I turn the doorknob and I start to open the door and who's finishing, opening the door? I'm opening the bathroom door on Ricky Martin. And then he just comes out and goes, oh hey. He's like, oh sorry, I just opened the bathroom door on you. Can I get a picture? Manager was like, okay, frantically running around trying to find him, and she was exhausted. I said, and this is our first foray into social media at that point. I said, okay, you take this picture. Hey, it's up Ricky. And then that gets on Twitter, and by the time it's on Twitter, I'm back in the room. I already walked in on Ricky Martin, and we went from there.
And so you'll see a little bit later how Ricky became involved in the recording process later on. So we finished recording Teenage Dream at Avatar Studios and we made our merry way back to Boston. We thought that was going to be it. At the time it was, we're going to do Teenage Dream, we're going to have this group come on for one episode, it'll be fun, that's it. And we were sort of sworn to strict secrecy at the time about being able to reveal that it was us on the show. So there was a lot of time where we knew it was coming but couldn't say anything. We were calling them saying, can we tell them now? And they said, no, we'll tell you soon. Can we tell them now? No, we'll tell you soon. It got to be 2 days before the show, and we called them and said, we need to tell people because the whole reason we're doing this is the publicity, right? And if we don't tell people before it gets out, we're going to miss out on all of this. And they sort of gave us the go-ahead and we let people know we were going to be on Glee. And so that was when you started to see it in the Daily and out on PubNet, and we let people know that we were going to be on this show. And they released the track for Teenage Dream. They did it the day before the show to sort of drum it up. So we were looking, it's like Teenage Dream's on iTunes. It's on iTunes and it's like for real record label. And we're watching it move up the charts over the course of the day. And before the show had even started, it was in the top 10. And we were sort of losing. So we all get together at Eli's house to watch Glee that night. 24-year Glee. Penn's house as well. He lived there. Yeah, so this is of course Glee's target demographic is 14 college students getting together to watch acapella music. And so we're sitting there and we've all got our phones out and we're watching it creep up the charts. It's at number 5, it's at number 4, it's at number 3, and we're taking these screenshots, and then the episode airs on the East Coast and it's at number 2. And then the episode airs on the West Coast, and it was at number 1. And it was only the second Glee song ever to make number 1 on the iTunes charts. It was the song from the first episode, and then Teenage Dream. That's very much gone to head, as is most of the rest of the process. And of course, after that happened, they wanted more. And it was around midterms week, I got another call from Tommy Farragher, who was the producer that had been working with that. And now Tommy's role, he's a great producer, I'm sure. So, do you know more? Can you give a little background on who Tommy Farragher was?
Staying Alive, the sequel, Saturday Night Fever. They were like getting into this whole like new wave.
Can't hear you.
Cinnamon. So the movie Staying Alive, sequel to Saturday Night Fever, where they were like leaving the disco stuff, going into the new wave stuff, and they did songs like Dance Too Close to the Fire, Look Out for Number 1, all that sort of stuff. He produced that and sang a lot of those songs, so that was his wheelhouse right there.
That's a wheelhouse.
So,
which needless to say,
Doesn't seem really to resonate.
was not Katy Perry. And
great, good guy.
he's great, nice guy. But to
Great
clarify what the studio was, what the studio sort of situation looked like was Tommy sort of sitting there and being like, that area needs to be more electric. And Ed being like, hey, let's get this guy in here and record this part. And so Ed was more or less running the show for these recordings. And after Teenage Dream sort of went #1 and became such a big hit for them, it was about midterms week, first semester, and I get another call from Tommy saying, so they want 2 more songs, and they'd like you to be in New York tomorrow. And I said, no. And he said, what do you mean, no? And I said, well, we're college students, and it's midterms, and we live in Boston, so we can't do it. I'm sorry, we want to, but there's no way. And this was after I called Eli and said, we really can't do this, right? And he said, yeah, no, we can't do this. He was my president at the time. And so Tommy goes, well, I'll call you back. Don't worry, I'll call you back. So wait a few minutes, calls me and goes, okay, so we're gonna do them in Boston. They're gonna fly me up to Boston. We need you to find a studio. We need me to find a studio. You're part of a multi-million-dollar record label, and you want me to find a studio. We need you to find a studio. So I go on Google and we found one, Q Division, that is just outside of Davis Square. And I said, Tommy, I found the studio Q Division. He said, well, what equipment do they have? I said, what equipment do we need? We need all these mics. Why don't you call them and find out if they have the equipment that we need? So he calls them, they have the equipment that we need, so we scheduled this in Q Division. And that was where we recorded the rest of the tracks. And what we did from that point forward was we booked out a day in Q Division, and I would say to guys, I need your class schedule for that day, and you need to tell me when you can come, and you can get on the Joey and walk over, we can shuttle guys back and forth, just whenever you're not in class, be in the studio, and we'll grab you for parts. And that was how the rest of the recordings went, and we did those arrangements. Well, Ed would arrange it beforehand. They'd call with about, 2 or 3 hours worth of notice before they were booking the studio for the next day, which Ed's wife was thrilled with. I'd call, hey Ed, you're coming to Boston tomorrow. Pregnant wife.
Pregnant wife. Oh. How pregnant? Oh,
and Ed, being the machine that he is, would spit out an arrangement at that time. Of course, us, being the musical amateurs that we were completely incapable of learning it that quickly. And so what we ended up doing for most of the songs was building them in the studio, where we'd have whoever was there, and Ed would say, all right, Evan, come in. Play a few measures of the bass line for me and say, now sing that. So I'd sing that. We'd play the next few measures. Now sing that. I'd sing that. And then he'd just paste them all together. And there would be a song by the end.
Also what happened was, because for the first one, we didn't know what was going to actually happen in the studio. We wanted to have our butts covered. So, like you said, the night before we recorded pretty much the entire arrangement so that we could walk in the studio, and it totally fell apart. We had something that we could put up forth. And we ended up doing that too. For all the other songs, what we would do is I would arrange it, and then we'd come up, and the night before, we just record in the bub room pretty much the whole song, so that when we got to the studio, whatever dilly-dallying or whatever, so like patching things for 3 hours or whatever happened, we knew we'd have something that we could use. And so by the time we got to the studio, it was more sort of like appeasing the producer, throwing in some extra things like that sort of.
Right. We pre-tracked a lot, unbeknownst to the people actually involved in Glee. We thought we were recording the whole thing in the studio, which became an issue later. But but I guess from there we should know that when we first recorded Teenage Dream, it wasn't clear who was going to sing the solo. And originally it was Connor Flynn who sang on that original recording. But then when they wanted to bring Darren Criss onto the show, and so from that point on, they used Darren, and we never actually got to meet Darren in person. We had some nice back and forth on Twitter. He seems like a great guy. So what the arrangement became was we would sing in Boston. They'd send those down to New York, where Darren would sing the solo, and then Darren would fly with the music out to LA, and they would record it. And they never gave us any inkling as to what the plot was that caused our songs to be used, why they wanted this song or that song. There were some songs that we started, and then they'd call us and say, "Ah, never mind, we're doing a different one." And they were very secretive about that whole process. We didn't know what the song was going to look like or why it was going to be in the show until we watched the show with the rest of the country. I guess what
Question? Did you record the tracks separately then and mix them later, or did you do the group as a whole, or both, or how'd you blend all that?
Everything was multi-track overdubs style. So the arrangement was built. I would build it in Pro Tools.
So in other words, the predominant thing was recording tracks and then mix them together so it sounded like a group. Or did you record the group as a whole?
Yeah. Well, I think the show makes no secret of the fact that their music is like highly produced.
Oh yeah.
So there was never a huge concern with like, oh, we need to make this sound like what you just sound like if you were standing there singing. There was no interest in that. It was just like whatever you need to do to make it compelling and interesting, go for it. And so
And they dubbed in the other guy.
Very peaceful.
And they dubbed in the big guy? They dubbed in the star guy?
Yes.
Yeah. He would sing a solo last. Like I said, I happened to meet him like a year after all this happened, but up until that point, nobody had met him or something. And he's very like he gives all the credit to the group, and he's very modest about it, and just
Where did the money go? Where did the money go? Where did the money go?
Why don't Sorry, we can definitely talk about all that, but I think there's a designated question part, and we don't want to lose time for the business manager. Okay. What I guess happened after this was the songs became very popular, and people wanted to hear them live, and the only song we could sing live was Teenage Dream. So we sang that song every day for like 2.5 years. And what you're going to see now is when we first recorded Teenage Dream, we asked if Ricky and his producer would like to come listen. And so Desmond Child, who's a Recording Hall of Fame producer, and actually wrote some songs for Katy Perry, not this one. And Bon Jovi. Probably Bon Jovi's a little better. So you're going to see that video, and then it's going to fade into a gig we did at Marblehead High School, and you can see the sort of response Teenage Dream used to get. We had better cameramen for the Sing Off.
So how was that video filmed?
Both of those were phone videos. So actually what ended up happening at Marblehead, a little background on that, was Connor was our soloist live for Teenage Dream. And he unfortunately had vocal nodes halfway through the year and wasn't able to sing anymore. And this was the first gig where we realized that Connor couldn't sing this solo. And we said, well, originally we thought, well, let's take a song out of the set. And I said, well, they hired us for this song. We can't take this song out of the set, so what are we going to do? And Connor said, well, they all know it. Let's just have them sing it. And so we went out there, and so Connor's just walking around, completely unable to sing, just videoing everyone while we're singing the backs of this song.
There's obviously more to say. You may have questions about this stuff. We'll get some time for that at the end. I just want to move into a brief segment about Pitch Perfect. And here we're gonna rely on Ed to tell us more about that experience. Before he does, I'm going to play you a bit of the video that was on YouTube about the Pitch Perfect experience, which shows Deke doing some of the coaching for that. And this is courtesy of the website and my brilliant video editing. It's always good to choose a guy in his 50s who can barely use a computer to do video editing.
It was like going to college, really. It was kind of cool. Like you'd see your schedule on the blackboard, and you know you had to be at like a 5-hour dance rehearsal, and then you go to singing class at a certain time.
2, 3, 4. What we're doing here on the 10th floor in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is giving them a crash course in singing a cappella. How to use your voice in different ways, how to sing solidly for 3 minutes without taking a breath. And also these arrangements to create a really full sound in these 10-part groups. Each person is singing their own part. This may sound familiar to you, but I want you to sing dum 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 on the same note for a long time.
This is a little weird to me. It's a little scary, but you know, it's fun, and it's fun to be around all these girls who sing. And some of the boys especially just don't stop singing, so you feel like you're at theater camp.
Working with Deke and Ed was really great because I was very intimidated at first. I hadn't been singing in a very long time.
Good first one for a little more awkward. It's like, it's the pageant girl, but she's like, you know, singing out Louise. If you sing it quieter, it actually brings a little bit of a sweetness to it where you're like, oh, but if you sing it a little too loud, you're like, oh. Alright, we gotta find a way to get that. We gotta find a way to get that tempo. But it needs to be short, not singing. Let me ask you a question though. Is pitch as important yet, or do you just want me to get the hay out? Because I'm still up on the topic. So it's not really like, I'd like there to be pitch. Pitch, yeah. Perfect.
I'm gonna turn it over to Ed now to help us understand a little bit about his and Deep's involvement with Pitch Perfect. And we also have a guest panelist today, Brandon Kitchell, who I understand is one of the stars of the film. So we're very pleased to have this as well.
So I'll try to go fast because this is it's less sort of about the Bubs, I guess, but basically all these things happen. People sort of assume that like Sing Off led to Glee, led to Pitch Perfect, but all these things were in development independently, and sort of happening without knowledge of the other things happening. If anything, like one show maybe gave them the confidence to like act on the next thing. For example, like Pitch Perfect was in development for years and years in script writing, but then they're like, oh, like, maybe we actually produce this film because things are, kind of taking off. But anyway, it was the same thing. The people at the movie were like, we need acapella experts, and they just started like Googling and going online and trying to find people who know about stuff. We also threw like, 2 or 3 degrees of separation to people who were working on the movie. So we sort of contacted them and they said, oh yeah, like we know you guys are on this short list. So Deep and I and a friend of ours named Ben sort of presented ourselves as a team. We're like, look, the 3 of us have worked together on the Sing Off. We know each other work together well. Like, have us be sort of your acapella people on this movie. And it worked out that way. And they brought us down. And you can see, like, it's not like you think making a movie is glamorous, but you saw the place we were in. Like, we had this tiny keyboard and like no resources, just being locked in a room with people. It was actually an abandoned state building in Louisiana. We were on the Veterans Affairs floor, just while the offices cleaned out, and that's where we ran rehearsals. And it was a learning space. There was this choreography room we saw a lot, and then on the same floor was a makeshift studio built by this awesome engineer, guy named Joseph McGee, who specializes in music for movies. He did like the Muppets movie and Pirates of the Caribbean, like big, huge films, and all of a sudden he's crammed in this closet in this like abandoned building. And then that was pretty much, we spent a month teaching them their parts. Some of them actually ended up singing on camera. Some of them had their voices replaced, but they still had to like know their parts so that they could. One thing we did want to do is like, when you saw the Warblers on TV, there would be all these parts happening, but the guys lip syncing would be like, and we were clap tracks with no one clapping. We really didn't want to be that, so we wanted even the girls who weren't going to actually sing their parts to be singing them as they were filming, so that like the parts were represented while it was happening. So that went on for a month, and it was like every week the songs would change, and you have to start from scratch, and you have to teach them new parts. Meanwhile, they're doing choreo and lines and all this stuff. And then the second month was shooting, where you're basically just there on set, making sure that they're either singing or mouthing the right thing and all that stuff. And then there's just a year of post-production where you kind of sit aside and think, I hope it turns out well, and that sort of thing. And there are obviously some Bub references. You saw right rounds in there. That's literally like the director being like, this Bub performance is right round, like we want that in our movie. There's definitely a lot of stuff that's like not even masked, like this is something from the Bubs and we want it. Most notably was a scene that got cut from the movie because it would have given it an R rating, which is the Bubs doing their signature R-rated vocal warm-up, and the girls group like coming back with their own R-rated vocal warm-up. A lot of the movie got cut because it was ours, but anyway, the other Bub-related thing was that part of the absurd plot is that this girl has some condition in her voice that becomes crazy low, and that enables her to like sing actual bass in this concert, which is why like in those scenes there were like super low bass notes happening. So what they said was, we need a voice actor to come in and give us these low notes, and it's better if they're local meaning like in your quadrant of the country, because that's how the union works. So I said, well, I know a guy in Atlanta who just has crazy low notes. I got Brandon on the phone, and he made up some story to his boss about like, I don't know what the lie was, but basically he got on a plane and came down and came to our little makeshift studio and like just farted out a bunch of seeds and got back on his plane and But so that's sort of what that experience is like.
So I think now I'm not sure whether I should ask Ed to tell the story that he mentioned in his video, or should we open it up to questions in general first?
The story itself is way less exciting than you would think, but so the vocal abilities of the girls was drastically different from girl to girl. One girl who we pulled in sort of as like immersive, like just let's cast somebody was this girl Kelly who was on Sing Off season 1 with the Bubs and from the vocals. And she's a great part singer, we knew she could do whatever we needed in the studio. So we pulled her in, and then there were like a couple girls who like had done choir or something like that, but then a lot of the girls, mainly the girls with speaking parts, like had either never sung in something before or like sung a little bit. Maybe the exception is Anna Kendrick, who'd done like some Broadway stuff as a little girl. So there were some really we wanted to use as many of their actual vocals as we could and replace as few as possible because
and so like I said, we were in denial that it was possible that we could actually win. But we start sort of looking around at each other like, well, if we do, what exactly are we going to do? We'll end up entangled in this incredibly extensive contract with Sony. We really weren't sure where things would go from there. But what that meant was that I remember this incredibly distinct moment. As soon as we were voted off the show, I don't know if you guys remember this, we came off stage, we finished our like a goodbye song, and we're all like standing around in the vomitorium of this the sound stage, and we look around at each other and we're like, well, that worked out really well. We looked at each other and said, well, we were on the show as much as nobody was. We got just as much exposure as they did, and we get to go home and go back to doing what we do, what we love to do. It was terrifying because we really didn't know what would have happened after that, and you can see the show continues to avoid like having college groups win because who knows where it would go. But yeah, it did work out pretty well.
I have this distinct memory of when they were narrowing down from 3 groups to 2, and we found out, like, as soon as we were all running off stage, and it was seared into my memory, Tim Conrad, we're all jumping up, and Tim Conrad's just, I'm graduating. Guys, this is exciting, but I'm going to graduate. We're still in the middle of the live now, like, Tim, we have a song coming up. Where's my microphone? I'm going to graduate. We walked off stage. We had the most epic, brothers circle, one of the most epic that I can remember, and and Tim graduated.
I'll jump in really quick. I'll say that the best thing about all of these things that have happened over these years is that it's so easy in the entertainment world to become jaded, and they stayed so not jaded and so real. And the fact that they went to bat for me like that, I thought meant, like, of everyone I've ever met in LA, I would guess almost none of them would do a gesture like that. Nobody would, put their own integrity over just like making things happen, or like making sure like a friend was involved to make things happen. It was just like, why do I need to move forward, and that's it. It's kind of a scary thing about LA, but to totally avoid that, I thought was pretty awesome.
producers of Glee, not off per se, but they didn't really know how to deal with us. We didn't care about money, and we were ready to say no. And they don't have that in their world. So it was really interesting. We could be like, well, no, we're not going to do it like that. I said, well, what do you mean? Then you won't be on the show. Okay? And then it's like, it's television. Don't you want to be on television? I said, yeah, only if it works. And so that was really interesting to deal with them. I don't think they'd ever had experiences like that. But as far as how the money worked and how we dealt with that, so Bill, yeah, where's Bill Heenahan for starters? Yes. So the first song, Teenage Dream, we were able to do as well. Actually, back up a little bit. We talked about it. We were going to have to be paid for these, which was fine because the Bubs are okay with making money. But our group motto is fun through song, and we never wanted the Bubs to become something that people joined to make money while they were in college. And that was something that we were very clear about from the beginning, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't profit personally from this. For us, anyway, we got to do really great things because the Bubs made money. We got to go to cool places, we got to do cool things. We would have more fun if we didn't make money personally. And so we were clear from the beginning that that was how we wanted it to work. The first track, we were able to get a sort of waiver, because these were all union tracks, union operations. So the first track, we got a waiver, and all the money from Teenage Dream went directly to the BAA in an account that they held aside. And that was Bill Heenahan and the BAA board really going back for us and setting this up and taking on more liability and additional reporting responsibilities. And so there is an account at the BAA where the royalties from Teenage Dream are held, and the current group can invest them in major capital expenses. So that was where Teenage Dream went. But then these other songs came around, and the union said we had to be paid individually. There was no way we could do this. So we went back to the drawing board on this, and we said, all right, so how are we going to do this? Because we're going to keep getting these checks, and we don't want them. And so we worked it out. We all agreed that for a year after Glee happened, we would give all the checks back and donate them into that account, the BAA account for the current group. And that got complicated tax-wise, and again, Bill was extremely helpful there. And what we ended up doing was calculating what everyone's additional tax burden was as a result of making this money, and then having them keep however much they needed to pay the taxes and donate the rest to the big pot. Nowadays...
Getting the tax deduction as well.
And getting the tax deductions, because the BAA is a tax-deductible charity, for those of you who might be thinking about donating. So,
I keep all my money.
the way the royalties worked was that everyone involved got an equal share of the tiny percentage that you get out of a royalty, which meant that we really got a better deal than Darren and Chris did out of it, because we got 13 14ths, and he got 1/14, because he had an equal share to each one of us when we were pooling. And then as things wore on, we actually got, well, we didn't get it, Ed got a share as well. And so he was paid for all this work that he was doing, which was really only right. Following off of that?
Just a quick follow-up. So, who assisted you in figuring out how to negotiate a royalty agreement?
So the question was, who assisted Evan in figuring out how to negotiate the royalty agreement, right? I'm sure that some of you have seen X-Men, and whenever Evan would get a call from any of the lawyers at Fox, it's like Wolverine would come out. What are you saying? You can be there when? Get real. You can talk it down, but go ahead, knowing that.
So
context provided.
it was really just one royalty agreement because after the first one, they were just copies for each individual one, and I agreed them through. The first one, my father's a lawyer, and one of his contemporaries at law school is an entertainment lawyer, and so actually that first car ride down, I'd be on the phone with their lawyer saying, well, what about this clause, what about this clause, what about this clause, great, hang up, call up this friend of my dad's, like, all right, so that lawyer said this, this, and this, what do I say back? And so he told me what to do, hang up the phone, go, all right, Fox lawyer, this is what we need to change. We also, of course, the BAA is amply supplied with successful lawyers, so we're very helpful in making sure that we were taken care of.
One of those successful lawyers asked this very question. Right, Eric? What's your question? Andrew?
Back to the creative side of it, I hope I missed the answer to this question. I went out to the Mark. Get a picture. Thanks for getting that. I have heard little snippets of these stories about the charts, Soul Sister and Katy Perry's image, not really being written down, that they're just sort of in your head, and that you kind of work with segments of the group, being one guy at a time, and that the group never really, like for instance, Soul Sister is not a song that the Bubs, even back then, were able to perform. Tell us a little bit about that process.
So the first song going in, we didn't know how much realism they were going for. So we did an arrangement that was the number of guys, that many tracks, went in and recorded it just as that, because we didn't know how authentic they wanted it to be. And it turned out they were just like, yeah, whatever you want to do. So we said, you just did Sing Off, where it's just like, here's our group sound, introducing out to the world. So then it was like, well, let's sort of introduce like the studio sound to the world. So from that point on, we weren't restricted by a number of tracks or number of voices or anything. So everything would get arranged right into, as being arranged and recorded at the same time, which is just how I arranged. And then we would take that session, take it to the bug room, and we'd sort of like isolate one part and be like, okay, this is the part I arranged for Sam. So Sam would listen to it, and he'd sing it, and we'd sort of go section by section. So it was all.
Did you take these bars, and then you teach them the next 8 bars?
Yeah, basically.
And there was also, as far as performing the songs live, there was a sticking point there that we had to work around, which was that Glee weren't big on the world knowing that the Warbirds were lip syncing. And it was sort of a constant, right? And it was sort of a constant back and forth. And initially, they didn't want us to perform any of the songs live. And once we started getting the publicity, we couldn't not perform Teenage Dream. And that was a sticking point with them as well, where they were constantly asking for more and more songs, more and more arrangements, and they were taking more and more of our rehearsal time to do these recordings. And we had to sort of say to them, we need permission to perform these live, because if you kill our live show, we can't exist anymore. And through that, we were able to get the go-ahead to do Teenage Dream. And then as the songs started coming in more quickly, we realized it was more efficient not to waste rehearsal time learning them, to learn our own things for performance, have Teenage Dream for the Glee angle, and let what was going to go on in the studio go on in the studio.
Plus, they own all the arrangements, with the exception of the 2 songs that were pre-existing Bubs songs before they were used for the show.
So Bubs could never do this.
We couldn't do that exact arrangement. That's actually a good point. That was during someone was asking how the rebate contract or the royalty contracts work, and that was one of the ones that was different was when they asked for songs that were on Pandemonium. They asked for When I Get You Alone or Bills off of Next, and those contracts originally said you will not sell any other recorded version of this, and we already have those up on iTunes. So when they asked for them, the response was, well, okay, but we need to change that clause because we're not going to lose those tracks. And by doing that, we actually had the tracks available on iTunes before the Glee tracks were. And at that point, we gained enough of following that there were people pointing them towards our versions originally over the Glee versions, and we made more money when people bought those. So that was helpful.
John?
I want to go back, if I can. I'm not sure. You may have already answered this, and I've been trying to listen very carefully.
but I think, Connor, you were the one who talked about, you know, here we are coming off of this mega high, and now we're back on campus and we're getting all these wonderful calls for probably gigs all over the country, if not in Europe and England and all that. And you alluded to, so how do we, what I heard was, where do we go from here as a group? Knowing fun through song is that base philosophy. And how did you guys, I mean, how did you reconcile that individually and as a group so that it wasn't always a, man, we're not going to LA this week. What a crappy week this has been. Just, if you can give us a sense of how you reconcile that, or did reconcile that in your own mind. Anyone, you know, whoever wants to answer that.
Honestly, our approach to that was, you know, we all worked really hard to gain ourselves this exposure, and we're going to make the most of it.
Okay.
You know, the fame that we were getting, the opportunities that we were being afforded, wasn't going to last forever. And you know, obviously, we're all going to graduate. We're all going to leave the group at some point. So a lot of the time, the approach was, if there's something cool that we can do, let's do it. You know what? What would we be doing with ourselves if we weren't taking this opportunity to go out of state for a gig, or you know, fly somewhere for a weekend because we can't?
Study.
I don't think that. Right. See, I don't think that at any point, I never got the sense from the group that we were thinking, okay, this is our new normal. Being, you know, on a set is our new normal. And there was always that sense of, this is really special, and this is a really great opportunity. And there were still some hallmarks of culture that stuck with us, that we convinced Ben Folds to get in a 15-passenger van with us, and we drove to Fish Dish and ate some fried foods. You know, and I'm sure many of you can relate to the magic of a 15-passenger van, and you know, after 5 minutes, how terrible it smells.
Did you guys rumble with Ben Folds?
If you guys want to learn more about that, no, we're not going to.
Big Wednesday.
Yeah, Big Wednesday. Yeah, I mean, I think that we were, of course, lucky because we didn't have to. There was, in a way, there was this looming existentialist. What do we do now? And then the phone call comes to Evan, who I was in his intro to comparative politics class junior year. If you remember anything from that class, then you're doing better than me. And he would just, you know, typical Evan Holman classes, sits down, gets a text, comes back 5 minutes later, has to leave again. And I'm sitting there pretending to take notes, thinking, is this kid running track or trying to run Bubs? So, yeah, it was crazy. But I think that a part of the appeal for a lot of folks we were working with at that time, you know, 2009, 2010, and 10, 11, was kind of that, yeah, let's just go with the flow. Let's be like water right now, and wherever this takes us, it's going to take us.
Yeah, just a question about on the Sing Off. When Ed came online, you definitely could hear the difference. I gather it was live, but I explained about the technical with, were you micing, were you doing different mixing things, because it was live. And the other question, how did you guys pull off those huge numbers with everybody singing something? How could you hear? That wasn't taped, I assume. How did you teach everybody? That seemed like a huge, but it was very good.
So the questions are, one, what were the differences in mixing that, I guess, we instated, and the second part was like, how do the opening numbers happen?
How do you pull off that big, huge, all those big numbers with everybody singing?
So lots of, I changed a few things. One thing, for example, is if you're brought up doing TV audio and you mix bands all the time, and maybe you mix like the Super Bowl halftime show, or maybe you mix the Grammys, or maybe it's, you know, a late night show or whatever. The way you treat the voice is to basically stand out above the band. So you have to do a lot of things that really put it forward. So engineers are trained to just do X, Y, and Z to a vocal. But if you do that to 15 people singing all at once, then it's just everyone fighting. So you have to figure out ways for people to sort of take up space, but not be right in the foreground. And that's something that, as talented and as amazing as they are, they just never had to do. So a lot of it was just sort of sitting with them and going over that, and they're good at it. They're like, okay, I get it, and then
So
they
you
sort
set
of
the mix, you set like the mix when they were going to record or monitor. It was real time, right? You set the mix.
So the show gets mixed in a lot of different capacities. As the show's happening, there is the front of house mix, which is somebody mixing for the people in the audience. There's a monitor mixer who's mixing for the people on the stage, totally separate mix. And then there's a broadcast mix, which is a truck outside where people are isolated from the sound inside, just getting the signal and mixing it more closer to a studio setting. And most of the shows were not live, so even then, that mix was temporary just for the directors who were directing shots. It all got recorded into Pro Tools and was mixed in post-production anyway. So really, there are 4 mixes of every performance that happen, and when you watch the show, you just get the last one.
And everybody was mic'd, right? Every single person was mic'd?
Everybody was mic'd. Occasionally, people had dummy mics. For example, the opening numbers. You know, if you're Bill Allen and you're watching it, you're saying, there's 200 people on stage, there aren't that many frequencies, this is all crap. You know what I mean? but for most folks, you just put a mic in everybody's hand and it makes sense. It's like, oh, they just got a bunch of microphones, like, that's cool, you know what I mean? So there were a lot of things like, you know, if you have 200 people on stage, you can have maybe 40 or 50 of them live and on because there are only so many frequencies you can have a wireless mic, and you're also on a lot with 15 other stages that are all using frequencies for their bands and their shows and things, so you have to fight to get as many as you can, then allocate them as you can, and then basically fake the way for the rest.
How did everybody hear on stage, or was it just because you did it sort of in pieces, it didn't matter? Everybody was there singing it, how could you even hear each other?
So they would have monitors or speakers just sort of around this. The directors were adamant about not seeing them, so they'd be sort of hidden under grates or behind things. Ideally, you'd have in-ear monitors, but again, those are more frequencies you need. And if you're not used to having in-ear monitors, it's kind of a really weird thing to sing to. Like most people on the show have not even used handheld mics, so it's just kind of too much. So it's just sort of the old-fashioned, rock concert speakers around with their own mix coming back at the performers.
All right, Killer. Brandon, your story.
What's the question?
He wants to know what Brandon's story is from Pitch Perfect.
Thank you. So I got kind of duped into being up here. I thought I was just going to be portraying D. Sharon, and they would Photoshop his head over mine. Then I realized they would also have to put a t-shirt on that was like 3 sizes too small. And my role in this whole thing is tiny, it's minuscule. I was at home, Ed called me out of the blue, said, what are you doing in like 2 weekends from now? I said, nothing. What are you up to? Thanks for calling in the last 5 years. So he convinced me, it didn't take long. I thought I was going to drive down and do this thing with him. Didn't know anything, had no details whatsoever. He called me 3 days later and said, we want you to come down on a Thursday night so you can record on a Friday. So the thing with my work, I work at the CDC, so government, pay, and I didn't ask for leave, that early in advance. But I told them that I threw my back out and I wasn't able to come in to work. So I flew down Thursday night. Friday morning, I get 3 calls from my boss, and he's saying, we need, some files from you. He said, I'm sorry, I really can't help you. His boss calls me next and says, we really need you to come in to help on this file. I said, I'm laid out on the floor in my home, I can't move, I can't come in. And fortunately, bought me enough time, and they found somebody else to fix the problem. So yeah, Ed had sent me a track. I had no idea what the songs were. I picked out a couple of them. I was just singing bass lines. There were some scratch vocal tracks, some female parts. You know, right? Female vocal parts. No lead. Let's start this over. Ed sent me some scratch vocal tracks that lacked the melody and the lead vocal lines. So I didn't know what all the songs were singing until I actually saw the movie. He told me the day before that I would actually be singing a female part in the arrangement. Sorry. Why not? So, yeah, so that was really interesting. Although I'm listed as male voice number 3, technically I should be female voice something. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Baton Rouge, I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but really lovely. It's just fabulous. He didn't speak enough about the building that we recorded in. It's really a condemned state building. It was so lackluster. But,
Is that the CDC?
Yeah. You visited.
What time of year was it?
Okay.
Fall, so October, November. Not as bad as it was wrong.
Yeah, definitely. But it was great catching up with Ed. I didn't actually get to meet anyone on the cast. I met all the music people. They were great. Met the director. Saw Elizabeth Banks. Saw some scenes that weren't actually included in the movie, which were fun. I was supposed to meet. Yeah, we drank some daiquiris. I didn't drink when I was in the Bubs, and I was kind of lame. So this was actually my first drink that I had with Ed, which was really awesome. Not condoning it for the young.
Before our next question, again, I just want to make note of the fact that Brandon is also a superb fantasy football player in the Bubs League, and he will propose trades to you if you play in the league that you will need a lawyer's assistance to understand if they're in your interest to do. So, beware should you play in the league.
I've never won, for the record, I've never won. But anyway, so that was pretty much my role. I was supposed to meet Rebel Wilson. She filmed the scene right before, so when I finished my parts, she was going to come in and do some vocal stuff in the studio, but she had just filmed the scene in which she was hit in the face with a burrito, and apparently it took 8 takes to do that, and she was pretty tuckered out, and she canceled on that. Yeah. That was happening. So, anyway, that was me.
Steve, what's on your mind?
So, if the recordings were done in advance, how did it work when you didn't know if you progressed to that level, or how was it received?
We knew in advance whether or not we'd progress to the next level. So they'd record the show, and at the end they would do the elimination, and we knew, but we were bound not to tell anyone. And it was interesting because I remember my parents would send me a text and be like, "So are you coming home, or are you still there?" I'm like, "Well, I'm still in LA right now." And that was sort of like all we could say about whether or not moving on.
Other questions? Yes, Rebecca Kline.
What was your reception when you got back to Tufts after filming or doing the Sing Off and
I'd like to defer to Penn Rosen. The question was, what were your assumptions coming back to Tufts? Assumptions about the reception coming back to Tufts after the Sing Off. So I'd like to defer to Penn Rosen.
He was nice.
We came back to campus and found, I got you. We came back to campus and found out that a lot of people at Tufts had watched our flick and had gotten really excited about it. And we were a little isolated from the community because we were so wrapped up in what we were doing. but eventually we came back and realized that like, people were getting together in the campus center and watching all the episodes, and people were treating it like, almost like they would like a sports team that was, let's say like Final Four basketball. It was pretty cool. It was sort of bittersweet, and in that we weren't there on campus to sort of like share and be supported there with them. But it was cool. It was cool to hear that people were that excited about it.
And when we got back, the university was also nice enough to throw sort of a welcome back for us, where we were presented with the key to the city of Medford and a citation from Somerville, the good kind of citation. So that was really great as well.
We're running short on timing, but Mr. Sachs, I believe you had a question.
Yeah, so hindsight is a great thing, and the university recognized the advantage of having you on Sing Off. What was their posture when you were trying to arrange that ahead of time, and how long did it take the university to get on board with the idea that this is a really good thing for the school?
I'm looking at the audience and seeing Eli. We spoke to just about as many people as we possibly could in the administration about the opportunity. They were excited about the opportunity, but they weren't jumping through any hoops to help us get out there. They really wanted us to prioritize our academics, but they left it up to us to manage both if we could. So,
I mean, you can Google Beelzebubs and Boston Herald, and there was an article from that time about it, and about it and trying to get out, talking about academics, and that's why instead of talking to one dean and saying, hey, is this going to work? And no, it's not. It's like, all right, well, instead we're in the bug room. We're going to have a sign to every single guy in the group and every single professor. And we're going to have to check off every single professor and go to them individually. And so the conversation is going to look different between Professor A, who's saying, hey, I have this, tremendous opportunity. And then one of my professors, I'm still really close, is saying, I can go to Los Angeles. This is incredible. Are you like this? Can you do it? Yeah! And so you had to go through. How many professors total would that have been, trying to imagine? But we have the paper still somewhere, and so you could see the board, and we, had rehearsals 3 times a week, and so we could check progress, and it was an impending deadline. And that's, Eli, I don't think he could ever get enough credit for managing that process.
Yeah.
Actually, 2 final questions, one from Eric and one from Tim, and then we need to wrap up. Eric, go ahead.
How did the difference when you guys got back, the people who were auditioning for the group, how did it manifest itself in the type of people that came to auditions, the numbers? Did it change? Were people telling you they want to do what you did on Glee, that's why they're in the room, that sort of stuff?
So, when we got back into Sing Off, around the year that we did the Sing Off, Tufts started introducing the option to include videos with your application to Tufts. And so they got a lot more awful cardigans in there. It was surprising actually because we expected the year after the Sing Off that we would be slammed with auditions. And actually I think because of the way the Sing Off aired compared with the college, admission time, that there was sort of a year lag. So I'd say that the year after the Sing Off we had 50 come out and took 3. And then the year after Glee, we had 75 come out and took 7. So it definitely ballooned. I mean, that year after Glee, we were auditioning until 3 in the morning for 3 nights. We had people call up and say, well, we'd like to audition. We said, okay, we have a time for you at 2:35. And they either, and they either took it or they didn't audition. We didn't have any other option.
Tim, you have nothing more? Anybody else with one final question? All right, well, I'm going to thank our panelists for the great.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? Great story, great presentations. Thanks for your preparation and sharing so from the heart with great style. Just fantastic. And thanks so much, Pete, for joining us from San Francisco. So we'll see you all on Sunday morning, of course, all the time between, but Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, there'll be those three panels, and certainly kids, we really encourage you to join the Be the Music session Sunday at 9. And particularly, one final great thank you, Mark, for coming to the
Hey, how you doing? Do you remember I visited you in Hong Kong? Yes, of course. Yeah, how you doing? Very well. Are you still there? Yeah. Retired? Yeah. Oh, they're great. Yeah. Okay, cool. And he does it better than anybody you've ever seen.